Hello, horror fans. It's me, Cassandra,
Zane.
and
Kylie.
and we are the Horrorcraft podcast. It's three of us again. Woohoo!
Woohoo!
Dance party.
Woohoo!
So we are super excited to have Kylie back. Kylie, we love you. And
I
we
love you
are
guys.
we are happy to have you back. And this is gonna be a fun episode. We are talking, obviously, we've been doing Vampire Month. And we are talking about one of the OG classics, and that is Fright Night. Fright Night, for those of you who don't know, is a movie about a young boy, Charlie, who ends up basically kind of finding out that his neighbor is a vampire and nobody believing him. And then said vampire is kind of pissed off, and it turns into a whole situation. And Charlie basically has to go up against his neighbor, the vampire, with nobody believing him. So it's basically the greatest vampire version of The Boy Who Cried Wolf. Pretty much.
Yeah.
So,
Pretty much.
yeah, definitely. But this is a great movie. It's got some great people in it. Chris Sarandon, it's got Amanda Beers, Roddy. I'm trying to think of his last name. We'll get to that in a minute. But anyways, this movie is fantastic. If you have not seen it at this point, it is currently streaming on AMC Plus. It also has a sequel that is currently for free on YouTube. I would highly suggest watching that one as well. There is also two remakes of Fright Night and Fright Night 2 that are currently available for streaming out there as well. So, but today, not only are the three of us filming, but we have a special guest. You may know him, you may love him, he may haunt your nightmares, but we have on Jamie McGuire, who is Mr. Smiley from the series From. Zane, you watched all of From, did you not?
Yes, I
Uh,
did.
Kylie, have you watched some episodes of From yet?
I have watched some episodes of From, but I have not watched them all. But
So, for those of
it's a
you
great
who
show.
have it, From is a fantastic TV show that is currently streaming on MGM Plus, and it is about a town that is, we don't know if it's stuck in a time loop. We don't know really what's going on. This is a show created by some of the creators from Lost and has on a fantastic cast. But basically, these people are stuck in the town, and what is happening is at night, these terrifying creatures come out and try to kill them. Mr. Smiley, aka Jamie, is one of those characters. And originally, he was meant to just be kind of a background character. He became a breakout hit, though, as the TV show became a hit. And you'll even see him in the season 2 promo images where he's in the background. But Jamie is absolutely amazing, and his smile is terrifying. And it is his natural smile, which is even more unnerving. But we've had the pleasure of having Jamie on before. If you haven't listened to that episode, please pause, go listen to it. And he mentioned how he liked Fright Night, and Fright Night is one of my favorites as well. I'm a huge vampire person, obviously, but I love Chris Sarandon as well. And so we knew we had to bring him back on. So Jamie will be joining us to do this episode. So sit back, relax, hide the coffin, close your curtains, make sure nobody's peeping in, and as always, let's cue the fucking music. Let's do this, bitch. Hello, horror fans. We are back, and we are so excited because we have on Jamie McGuire. How are you, Jamie?
Oh, I'm terrific. Thanks. Yourself?
I'm doing great. So you're with the three of us right now, and we are about to talk about one of my favorite movies, and I know you like it as well, Fright Night.
Yes.
Yeah. So Zane and Kylie both had not seen Fright Night before this.
Oh, okay.
I had seen the remakes, not the original.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what were your guys, Zane, I'll go with you first. What was your initial thought with Fright Night?
I liked it. I mean, I like any good vampire movies, but like we always say, it's worth a watch, and this definitely was worth a watch.
Definitely. Kylie, what about you?
I definitely liked the original better than the remakes. Most definitely. Um, it was really good though. It's just a good vampire movie. Like if you really are a true like diehard vampire fan, like you gotta watch Fright Night.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't realize this. I mean, maybe people do, but I did not realize this. This is Tom Holland's first directorial debut,
Oh,
before
wow.
he went on and did anything else. So Tom Holland had done a lot of screenplays. He actually had done another film with I'm looking for his last name. Roddy
Roddy McDowell,
McDowell.
right?
Yep, Roddy McDowell. He had actually written the script for Class of 1984 that had Roddy McDowell in it. And Roddy McDowell was really impressed with the way that he had wrote the script. So when he set out to do Fright Night, Roddy McDowell was kind of his first choice to play Peter Vincent. So it's really it's a great, it's kind of the world's most fucked up version of The Boy Who Cried Wolf, because it's the boy who cried vampire. Um and so to briefly just kind of synopsize it, this movie is about a kid named oh my gosh, I'm trying to forget his name.
Brewster.
Charlie Brewster. Yeah, because You're So Cool, Brewster, which is actually the name of the documentary they did for Fright Night. But Charlie Brewster is just this average kid. You're kind of your kid next door, and he ends up stumbling upon his new neighbor who he's very suspicious of, almost in like kind of a rear window kind of way. He knows something's going on, um, but he starts to realize that his neighbor might be a vampire. And no one believes him. He tells his mom, tells his girlfriend, tells his friend, and they think he's just going off the deep end. And we, for a minute, think he's going off the deep end as well, until he's confronted by Jerry, who is his next door neighbor, who is an actual vampire. And he has to kind of convince everyone around him that he's not crazy. And by the time he does that, he has fully set his sights in Jerry's purview, and Jerry just feels like he has to take him out now. And it leads to a very crazy series of events. One being a dance sequence that I think nobody expected, but ends up loving every single time they see it. And ends up with his girlfriend getting kidnapped by Jerry. He has to go save her. Peter Vincent is a horror personality, kind of like in the vein of Elvira, that Charlie has looked up to. And he thinks that Charlie is crazy. And Charlie ends up pleading with him. And finally, he helps Charlie out. And they do end up taking out Jerry in the end. And everything goes back to being all right. But does it? Because obviously there's a part 2 made, and we'll get into that. But Chris Sarandon as Jerry, that's the first thing I want to point out. I do not feel like this film would go anywhere without Chris Sarandon. What about you guys?
I agree
Agreed.
completely. I can't imagine anyone else playing that role as well as he did. And I thought I read somewhere, looking at interviews, that initially I'm not sure he was even sure he wanted to do it. Then after he read the script, he liked it and agreed to do it. And then after Fright Night, 3 years later, he and Tom Holland did Child's Play together.
Yep, they
It's
did.
the first Chucky movie ever made.
Yeah.
And if I remember right, I think Tom Holland wanted Chris Sarandon to do this, almost fought for him even. It's just like, no, I want him to do this.
Yes. Yeah,
Well,
he did.
yeah.
So I don't think this movie would work as well without him or Peter Vincent as a character. I think that anchors the story really well, because you have these two characters that are kind of kooky in their own right. You have the neighbor who you think may be a vampire, who ends up being a vampire. And Chris Sarandon actually ended up improvising parts of his character. So like the whole thing with Amy, Charlie's girlfriend, with her being like an reincarnation of his past love, that was something that Chris Sarandon had brought in because he wanted to round out the character. And Chris Sarandon actually, when you watch the movie and he turns into the vampire, you see that he has like the finger extensions. Chris Sarandon actually helped put those on during makeup, because Chris Sarandon had done Broadway and different things before that. So he was very used to costume makeup. And so while they were putting it on, he figured to help them out, he would help them put on the finger extensions for his hand. Which is very nice of him, I feel like, because that has to be a hard job. Like that, when you see him transform into that makeup, I think they said it was like 6 hours that he was in for that, like the full transformation with the teeth and everything like that. So vampires, the vampires in this story, they are a lot different, are they not?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very different.
Yeah, very different. Who's your favorite in this movie? I know my favorite, but well, my two favorites, but I'll start with you, Jamie. Who's your favorite character in this movie?
Oh, it's got to be Jerry, hands down.
Yeah.
The main antagonist, and Chris Sarandon played him so well. It's the perfect mixture, I find, of charm, intimidation, and creepiness or scariness, whatever word you want to use.
Yeah, definitely. We see him kind of strike that blend in Child's Play as well, where he, as Mike, the cop, you kind of have him wrestling between, am I really believing this woman because she seems believable, or I'm a hard knocks cop? How do I recognize this? We see how he plays with that duality. Zane, what about you? Who's your favorite character?
I also have to go with Jerry. I mean, yeah, it's just, he played a very good character. Just his acting was on point.
Kylie, what about you?
I'd say Pete Vincent, the TV guy. I really liked him.
Yeah.
Because it almost kind of seemed like he kind of didn't believe in like what he was doing anymore. Like when Charlie came, like, there's a vampire living next door to me, and he kind of like, vampires still are real, are real or whatever. But I just thought his character was really wholesome and cute.
Yeah, so Peter Vincent's character is actually based on Vincent Price. That's where Tom Holland took the inspiration from, and his name is actually modeled after Vincent Price and Peter Cushing. So
I can see that for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. And his character,
I never knew that, but I could definitely see that.
Yeah, and his character was made to be like the Vincent Price type character. And Roddy McDowall was the one that was like, no, I think even though I can see how we have that inspiration, I want him to be kind of like a disillusioned horror host. He's like, I want him to be that kind of like, I think the way he said it was an old ham of a shadow of himself, where he no longer, like Kylie was saying, he no longer believed in what he was doing, especially being a horror host, and then he gets presented with this situation. So I could definitely see that, and I'm glad that they did play it that way, because I mean, I love Vincent Price, but I think Peter Vincent being the character that he is, it works a lot better in this movie. So I'm also a Jerry fan. I mean, from the get-go, Chris Sarandon is versatile. I mean, we see him in this, we see him in Child's Play, he's in Princess Bride. A lot of people do or do not know that he's the voice of Jack Skellington in Nightmare Before Christmas. He's the voice of Jack Skellington. The singing voice is Danny Elfman. But he's versatile. He's that guy, most definitely. But I like Evil Ed. I do. There's something about Evil Ed that's just enduring to me. He's this kooky kid who's, Charlie's best friend. Charlie's kind of a dick to him. And I know Evil Ed can kind of be a little intensive, but we see why kind of Evil Ed ends up getting seduced by Jerry to become a vampire, because he's tired of being the one that sticks out and everyone picking on him. But I just like his character. And it's funny because the guy who plays Evil Ed then goes on to do 976 Evil, which is another great movie as well. But I think Evil Ed is a misunderstood character, most definitely. So, which kind of brings up my next thing. Kylie and I talked about this, but unpopular opinion, I don't think Jerry is the villain in this movie. I really don't. I feel like Charlie.
No.
I feel like Charlie's maybe a little bit more the villain in this movie, in some respects. I don't know. What do you guys think about that opinion?
I think I agree, because the way it's portrayed, it's almost, depending on your point of view, Jerry could either be the main protagonist or antagonist. But I do agree how Charlie could be more, or I could see rather how Charlie could be more of the villain. But I'm not really sure. But either way, I think I can understand that point of view where Jerry being, say, the main character in that movie.
Yeah, I just feel like, so Kylie and I were talking about this beforehand, but you see in the beginning of the movie where Charlie is kind of pressuring Amy and then ends up ignoring Amy and kind of being a dick to her. And then, he's just hyper focused on this whole situation. Even when he's trying to apologize to Amy, he still is not focused. And then it's just, you see how he treats Amy, and then he also treats his best friend the same way. And, I know that that's maybe meant to kind of clash against certain things, but like in certain respects, yes, was Jerry a killer? Did he kill these people? Yes, obviously he did. But there's one line that sticks out to me in this whole entire movie, and it's when Jerry confronts Charlie, and he said, "I'll give you the choice I never had," which makes me believe that Jerry never wanted to be what he is, but he was turned into what he is against his will. And so I kind of have to have sympathy for him. I feel like I have sympathy for a lot of morally great characters. I'm sorry, that's my character flaw. But I feel like he didn't ask for this. He's just trying to exist. And Charlie's the one that kind of comes in and blows up his whole life. I get it. Murder's wrong. Charlie's trying to do the right thing. I get it. But I feel like Charlie has no place to throw stones
Wait a
at
minute.
Jerry.
It's not murder if they're vampires. So it's not murder if they're vampires. Or Charlie's to girlfriend and she's like, "But murder. It's not murder."
Yeah. I'm sorry. You got pixelated for a minute. You kind of went in and out for a minute, Kylie.
Of course.
Yeah. So, but no. What you were trying to say is that it isn't murder if they're vampires, which I guess I get. Yeah, I mean, I get if
they just became the undead. They didn't die. They just changed.
Yeah, we don't know if did Jerry actually kill them? Like, they say that they're dead, but could they be these people that he's saying he killed? Could they be vampires off somewhere? Like, I don't know. Like, that is a good point. Like, they say that they're dead, but are they dead? Or are they undead? Like, we never really get that kind of confirmation. And the only reason I bring up this point is you guys both have not seen the sequel. Jamie has. I shared it with Jamie when we talked last time, and Jamie saw the sequel. But in the sequel, I would say Regina is more of a villain than Jerry is. Jerry's kind of an unintentional villain in this, where he kind of has to protect his own. Regina in the second movie knows what she's doing and is exacting revenge the whole entire time.
No, I could see that for sure. But in all fairness, Charlie did kill her brother, so at one point, if you want to play that card, I'm not sure. It's
I mean,
it's like okay, the brother Jerry may not have had a choice. Regina, I feel, really did have a choice, but
at the same time, he did.
Basically goes, you killed my brother. What do you think I'm gonna? It's like, do you really think I'm not going to do anything?
Yeah, I kind of, devil's advocate. Yeah, I do. I mean, it is a choice to kind of do the things that she does to Charlie, but again, she did kill they killed his brother, her brother.
Oh, I agree. She probably did have more of a choice than Jerry did, but still, Jerry did kill her brother. Not that I'm defending her, as you said, devil's advocate.
Yeah, no.
I can see how she's more of a villain, less of a protagonist than Jerry was.
Yeah, I feel like you so Chris Sarandon obviously is just a fantastic actor. And the way that he portrays Jerry, you kind of get the sense the whole entire time that he really didn't have a choice, and that he really doesn't have a choice but to defend his lifestyle. And I mean, he did steal Charlie's girlfriend, but was Charlie the best boyfriend to begin with? Maybe not. So, I mean, that whole scene where Jerry's like seducing her and stuff, and even like when he's telling her that, like, that's his former love, and they have that whole scene, like she gets scared, and like she like goes to like, say I'm sorry or something, and he's like, you don't have to say that. I feel like that's a little like, is it Jerry's fault that Charlie wasn't taking care of his girlfriend in the first place? I feel like that's a hot take, but I'm just saying. But no, I do. I just feel like I get Charlie's point of view. Murder is wrong, but do we have confirmation that they were murdered? No. So we can't say that he's a murderer, and it's not his fault that he's a vampire. So, and again, devil's advocate, Regina, it's not her fault that Charlie killed her brother. So we'll get into part 2 and why that's relevant in a little bit. But special effects. This is the first vampire movie at that time to spend over $1 million on special effects. Yeah.
Wow.
That's a lot.
That is amazing.
Yeah. I think the budget, I am looking up to confirm, but I think the budget in this movie was $9.5 million. And this is 1985. Like 1985.
Right, that's what I was thinking. It's 1985. That's a lot.
It's a lot of money. It really is. And you kind of see, so the funny part about the special effects too is the shark teeth look for the vampires. That was not added until the last minute. Tom Holland asked one of the special effects supervisors to come up with this idea. He said, hey, if you have some extra time this weekend, please make this. And we may use it, we may not. I just want to look at it. And it ended up being in 90% of the movie because of the fact that he liked the way that it looked different from all of the other vampire looks. Like it's terrifying. It's not your Dracula, like you see Jerry with like the teeth, and obviously, and he could be like that normal Dracula, but then when he goes like full tilt night creature look, that's like a whole other thing.
Yeah, the nightclub scene and the final showdown, that's a whole different look, which just adds to it.
Yeah, I feel like you're not expecting that. You're not expecting when you're thinking, okay, he's a vampire and stuff like that, you aren't expecting him to turn into something like that. And I was bothered the whole entire time with this movie about why was Jerry eating so many apples every single time you saw him. And apparently that was a choice that Chris Sarandon made because he wanted Jerry to always be eating an apple because of fruit bats. And since Jerry turns into a bat towards the end, he was, yeah, I don't know why that was a correlation, but I was like, why is he eating all of these bats? He said Jerry had a lot of fruit bat in his DNA. That is what Chris Sarandon said. So,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah,
I kind of,
it makes it. It helps the scene. It makes it.
yeah, it
And
does.
that detail, it helps it even more. It's, I guess, what do you want to? It's staying true to the character, basically doing background on the fruit bat characteristics, him behaving like a vampire and a bit of a fruit bat, while having that much fruit in him.
Well, and it's kind of interesting that in this like environment, Jerry would be eating real food because we see a lot of like vampire movies where vampires do not eat real food. Like they cannot
Yep.
like we hear different movies where they talk about how it's like they taste like ash. So in this world, it's very clearly that they've been able to adapt a little bit better because they're able to eat real food as long as they've been fed with blood. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing to put up as well. So back to what I was saying before. So Tom Holland asked visual effects supervisor Randall William Cook if he could devise a shark mouth for one of the vampires. They didn't have any time nor money left in the budget to create a elaborate prosthetic, but Cook agreed to concoct a rig over a weekend with the provision that it would only be seen on screen for a few seconds. Ultimately, the mouthpiece, which was really just slammed together, was not only featured extensively in the film, but it was also used in the image for the film poster for the film, where you see that shark mouth. So that's really interesting that ends up becoming a big part of it. The other thing is the Ford Mustang that Charlie has, which always kind of was like, why does Charlie have a Ford Mustang if he's living in suburbia? I didn't quite understand that, but apparently that is actually Tom Holland's Ford Mustang. It is a 1964 Ford Mustang. The car was later totaled in an accident a decade later. If this was my fiance hearing this, he'd probably start screaming. Because of the fact that is a beautiful car. So obviously, the William Ragsdale, who played Evil Ed, he ended up injuring his foot running down a staircase during the last shot in the film that he filmed. So he ended up spending 3 weeks having to be out. And so they worked around it and then shot his scenes, which is kind of interesting. The nightclub that they used was actually a former hardware store that they gutted and recreated. They were already using it for Brian De Palma's body double. So they ended up just using the same film set and slapping different things on there. This was the second highest grossing film of 1985. Does anyone have a guess what the first one was?
No idea.
Freddy's Dead, A Nightmare on Elm Street 2 was the first highest growing. This was the second. They originally, I don't see this, so I'm glad they decided against this. Originally, Charlie Sheen auditioned for Charlie Brewster. But Tom Holland decided his looks weren't right for the character. So, William Ragsdale, which actually is the guy who plays Charlie. So I said Evil Ed, but it's actually Charlie. They said that Charlie Sheen looked too much like a hero, where William Ragsdale looked more like the kid next door. And that's ultimately what Tom Holland was going for.
No, I can understand that, because William Ragsdale looks more sort of somewhat of a geeky boy next door kind of look, whereas Charlie Sheen, if he was cast as that, would look sort of also a boy next door, but more of a hero, cool high school kid kind of look.
Yeah, you have to think about his brother, Michael Sheen, who was in Breakfast Club. Think about how he looked in Breakfast Club, his brother. And think about how, like, that would just look too much like I'm a really cool jock kind of feel. And I don't think that would work because everyone's going to believe him. Like, if he comes out and says, hey, my neighbor's killing somebody, everyone's going to believe the quarterback, the small town hero, the darling. No one's going to believe the nerd.
I hear you. And you see it all the time with almost any horror movie, because say if Charlie Sheen or Emilio Estevez were cast as the main character, you could see them as being the jock or the most popular kid in high school or the would-be prom king. You're going to have the police and media all over the neighbor's house. Meanwhile, if you have someone that looks like the character of Charlie Brewster saying, I think my neighbor's a vampire, he's killing all these women, he's making these women disappear, like most people are just gonna laugh him up and say, okay, yeah, whatever, kid, see ya. Just stop watching scary stuff before you go to bed.
Right.
So, yeah, definitely. I mean, truly. And the reason why no one believes Charlie is because Jerry is a good looking guy. Like, Jerry is meant to be this heartthrob type character. And everyone's going to believe him because he looks like a well-to-do person, where Charlie is this nerdy kid who obviously is very clearly like a horror fan. And, people are going to look at that like, you're watching way too many Peter Vincent movies. Like, why are you saying this about this man who clearly is just living his life? When Jerry is whistling when he sneaks into Charlie's room, I was always trying to figure out what that song was. That's Strangers in the Night by Frank Sinatra.
Nice. I'm glad you mentioned that, because when I was watching that just a while ago, I'm like, what is that song?
Yeah, I was wondering.
And the fact Strangers in the Night, it's such a perfect title.
It really is. It really is. Tom Holland also, I mean, he was really good about methodically putting in these little Easter eggs in. We see that with other films that he does as well. But when he had that scene with Billy Cole, where Billy Cole is, the werewolf, and he creeps up the staircase behind Charlie and Peter Vincent, that was actually inspired by Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. And I was kind of curious, as I didn't remember that, but there is a scene in Abbott and Costello where Abbott and Costello are like trying to lurk and Frankenstein is right behind them. So I think that that's kind of cool to bring that. That's what I like about Tom Holland's movies, is Tom Holland knows what he's doing, especially with horror movies. And he brings on all these different elements that he really is trying to play with, and harkens back to a lot of older things. So like Peter Vincent, Abbott and Costello, creature feature kind of stuff. I think those are the details that kind of definitely set his film apart. So what is your favorite part in the whole movie? I'll start with you first, Zane.
Probably. I would have to say when Charlie ends up killing Jerry, and like that whole sequence of that was just like very action packed, very just, it was a lot happening at once, and it was just a good sequence.
What about you, Jamie?
Got to be the nightclub scene, because I love, and the song too, "Good Man in a Bad Time." That song's playing as soon as Jerry walks in the nightclub, and throughout the entire time of that scene, there's this perfect blend of charm, seduction, a little bit of humor, and just scary, intimidating action, especially when he takes out the bouncers. Because the bouncers aren't expecting this, because I mean, these are guys that look like bodybuilders or 80s wrestlers. They're not, and when they see someone that looks like Jerry, they look at him, it's like, oh, sure, I can take him easy. Then when one of them actually sees him transform with the eyes, the nails, and teeth, the bouncer actually gets terrified that Jerry can pick up this guy with one hand, not only slice him, but give him a huge toss halfway across the room.
Yeah, I think that is wow. Yeah. It sets the tone for him as soon as he comes in, and you know that he is just about to mess things up. Kylie, what about you?
I think when they all go to Jerry's house, Peter Vincent, when Charlie's trying to, like, he's a vampire and Jerry's trying to play it off like I'm just a regular person. I just thought that scene was really, really funny.
So I have two, of course, because I have to be original. But I really like the scene when Evil Ed goes to Peter Vincent's house and kind of taunts Peter Vincent, and Peter Vincent kind of is like faced with his worst nightmare, and that whole scene is just, I think both of them too just being really slapstick with it, and it's just kind of all over the place. My ultimate favorite scene though is when Jerry ends up coming on to Amy. I think that that's just a solid scene. And for me, it's one that definitely sticks out in my head because it's Jerry as a character. It's not only him letting the mask slip of him being the vampire and him actually having his human side, but you could see how easily Amy is seduced by that. And I think that's what makes any great vampire story is a vampire is alluring. It draws you in. That's the whole purpose. And so if you don't have somebody who's playing like the master vampire that can't draw somebody in, your film isn't going to work. And I think that's where you see Chris Sarandon really in his realm, where he is bringing in Amy's character and seducing her into becoming a vampire. And I love that scene. The music that plays behind it's fantastic as well. I think it's just perfectly done. It's funny because for Amanda Bierce to do that scene, she obviously shows her back and her shoulders and stuff. Well, she was so self-conscious about having her front show that she actually duct taped it, and they had to block out where the duct tape was. But I mean, you have to do what you have to do, and I think that that's kind of an inventive way. I bet that really hurt though. Well, to be honest, that was probably really painful taking off.
Probably.
So kudos to you.
Yeah.
For doing that. So they planned originally to enhance Jerry's voice when he turns into his vampire self. But the tests were so poor on how they enhanced it that they went back to Chris Sarandon's voice, because his voice was more terrifying as him being in his vampire mode than actually them enhancing it. So kudos to Chris Sarandon again. Like your voice is more terrifying than if it was actually enhanced.
That is impressive and saying something too. That is talent for sure.
Right.
If you can actually outbeat with your natural talent, if you can actually outbeat voice enhancers, that is saying something.
Yeah, I definitely, and listen, that's coming from you, who your natural smile is terrifying and makes your whole character on from. So, I mean, you would know, of course, how to do that. I just have to point that out because that's always the one question I get is that his real smile? Yes, indeed, it is your real smile. Like, And so the fact, like we were saying before, that if that's your like your feature that you already have and you know how to do that, that is more impressive than you acting into it and them enhancing it in a certain way. Um, so I just had to point that out because that's a gold nugget right there.
I
Um,
appreciate that. Thank you.
no
Because
problem.
I actually don't know how many people have asked me, is this your real smile? Does it hurt that much? And do you always look like that? Or it's like they would see, or even if they see a regular picture of me anywhere, not just in my phone character, it's like, okay, that's actually him. I don't know if it's more creepy or less creepy. The smile. It's sort of torn. It's like, okay, the smile's still kind of creepy, but we know he's not as terrifying right now because this is just him.
So one little last bit of trivia before we get back before we go into the sequel and the other films. Um Tom Holland actually had each character write a page or two of backstory about their character and what actually goes into who they are and stuff like that. So a lot of the stuff that we see with the different characters, especially Jerry, like I said, a lot of Chris Sarandon stuff that he wanted to put in there, that got made into there because of the fact that Tom Holland had them do all of that. Um, I think that adds to it, though. What do you guys think?
I agree. And it's interesting you said that because I heard somewhere before another director actually did give some of the cast a little bit of homework to do for their characters. And when they did that, not only was that director impressed, but they were all in agreement that it helped build their character as well, to help them portray the characters that they say did their homework on.
I know which one
Just
you're
added
talking
more to
about.
their backstory. I'm sorry?
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about. It was It. And the original, the new It that was done when they split it up into two chapters, the director had the kids create kind of their own fill for each character based on what was already given with the previous iteration and the book. And then when they were done filming the first one, each character wrote a letter to the people that were going to be playing their future self in part two on where they saw the character going and their hopes and their dreams and stuff for that character. And then they gave it to each person when they started filming It Chapter 2. Which, I mean, you could see that. You could totally see that. That's probably one of the best features about it and It Chapter 2 is the way that they kind of hand off seamlessly, like who the characters are as children facing it and then as adults facing it. So, but I've heard other directors, but that's the one that popped out in my mind is I know that the guy that directed both It and It Chapter 2, he had them do extensive homework both on the adult and the child side. So, I mean, it works. I think
Hey,
it
if it
adds.
works,
Yeah,
it does.
it definitely adds to the thing. So obviously, Fright Night is a fantastic movie. Um, Fright Night gets a part two. Fright Night 2 is about Jerry's sister, Regina, who comes to terrify Charlie and Peter Vincent, and does so as Charlie has gone through therapy to convince himself that what happened wasn't real. And so we meet Jerry's sister, Regina, who is infinitely more evil than Jerry, I would say, and has a whole new crew of people. There is a prolific scene in that movie that I absolutely love where they are playing bowling and they end up bowling with somebody's severed head.
I do remember that scene.
Yeah, I love it. One of my favorite character actors is in that movie. Brian Thompson. He plays the guy that like eats the bugs and stuff. So I knew when I saw him in there that automatically this is going to be good. But Fright Night 2 is definitely a different, I would say different seen than Fright Night 1, obviously, but Fright Night 2, I think, has its own footprint to it. I mean, Jamie, you've seen Fright Night 2. How do you think it stacks up to the original?
When it comes to not just horror movies, but any movie in general, I find you most times you cannot beat an original. You can't beat a classic. Fright Night is, in my mind, both. Fright Night 2 did well, but in my opinion, Fright Night will always be better. Fright Night was fantastic. Fright Night 2 was fantastic. Fright Night
Yeah,
was just a little better in my mind. And I find that with most horror movies, the sequels are good and they at times even match the original, but it's very hard to beat the original or the first one.
yeah. So Fright Night 2, in my opinion, is good. It's a different movie than Fright Night 1. I think both of them have very different feels. Fright Night 1, yes, it's got some comedy to it, but it's more of a straightforward movie. Fright Night 2 is definitely more of a horror comedy. Fright
For
Night
sure.
2 has some horrifying moments, obviously, but it was meant to be more of a different kind of movie. Um, has anyone seen the sequel of the remake of Fright Night? That came out with Colin Farrell.
I did once years ago with Colin Farrell, Anton Yelchin, I believe, right?
Yes, yeah,
And I think Chris Sarandon actually had a brief cameo in that too,
yes,
didn't he?
yeah,
And I think, and his character's name was JD, right? Because with
yeah,
the initials for Jerry Dandridge, but it was just listed as JD. I saw that once years ago.
yeah. So I like Fright Night. See, it's Fright Night is even dog approved. Um, but I like the Fright Night remake. I do. I think in terms of remakes, there are a lot that go wrong. I think the Fright Night remake, it's not going to be the original. However, if you shift it away from the original and as its own movie that kind of built upon the concept that Tom Holland had already brought, I think it's well done. I think that it's definitely got its own story and it's definitely light years apart from the original. So I think you can enjoy both of them without feeling like it's murdering the first one. Because Tom Holland was predominantly featured in the new version. He was, I think he supervised on the new one. He was asked to help write it. And it did kind of freshen it up a little bit. Colin Farrell did a good job. I mean, even Chris Sarandon said the same thing. I think I saw an interview where Chris Sarandon was like, if I could have picked anyone to be Jerry, that he was probably the best choice that there was going to be. Do I think it's as good as the original? No, nothing's going to be good as the original. But it's a good movie. Now, the second Fright Night movie that they came out with that's a remake, I'm sorry, everything is worth a watch, and you could go watch it and make your own opinion, but that is hot garbage. Just going to say it here. It's not like Fright Night 2, and I don't know what it was trying to be, but it wasn't being anything.
No, like I said, remakes or sequels, very tough to beat the originals.
Yeah,
The
I
first
feel
ones
like
that come out.
the original, it's okay for remakes and redos if it's far enough away for the original and it's not like a shot for shot recreation or stuff like that. But in cases like this, especially with Fright Night, you're not going to beat the original. Like the original, there are some movies that are lightning in a bottle. Fright Night is one of those. Fright Night was kind of Tom Holland's like all in for the horror genre, and it's a classic for a reason. Like this again, this was one of the highest grossing movies in 1985. That's saying a lot. There were a lot of horror movies in 1985 and years prior. So the fact that this is one that sticks out for a lot of people, that's why. So Fright Night 2 though is the original Fright Night 2 is getting a I think it's a Scream Factory edit from Scream Factory here coming out. I don't know if that's coming out towards the end of the year or if that's coming out early next year, but they are having a Scream Factory because that is not currently available on streaming. You can find it on YouTube for free, but it is not in any format. So I don't know if that is the case, and that's why now they're coming out with a Scream Factory restoration. But I will definitely link everything in the description before. There is a special edition of Scream Factory that they did for a Fright Night that came out in 2015, and there was only a limited amount, but you will see copies available from time to time, and I would highly recommend it. There is a lot of special features on there, which is really cool. And there is a documentary out based on Fright Night that's called You're So Cool, Brewster. And I think at one point in time that was streaming on Shudder. That may still be streaming on Shudder. I don't know. We'll link everything below. But I would highly recommend watching it. I've seen it before. It's great. It gives you a lot of good behind the scenes stuff. And it's crazy because Roddy McDowall, who plays Peter Vincent, he did a lot of behind the scenes, like shooting, where he had a camera and he was shooting things behind the scenes. They never found those tapes. Never found those tapes. Don't know what happened to it. None of the cast knows anything. So I just find that really interesting that he did.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, he liked the process and everything that went into the film, so he was constantly filming things behind the scenes. So nobody knows where that footage went to. So maybe one day it will be unearthed, but yeah, right. Nobody knew where it went to. So hopefully one day that will be unearthed and we could see, because a lot of the cast said that there was a lot of really good behind the scenes stuff that he ended up catching that kind of would be lost to time if that footage never comes forth. So hopefully that will be found one day and we can all see that footage. So final thoughts. So I'll start with you, Zane. Final thoughts about Fright Night.
Definitely worth a watch if you've not seen it. Even give some love to the remakes. I know you said that the remake for the second one was not great, but still worth a watch. This is what we always say. So
yeah, watch it, form your own opinion. I would just say, as somebody who loves the first one and is willing to give a lot of things a shot, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I need to go back and rewatch it, but I just remember being like, wow, that was a waste of time. And I'm one that kind of gives everything a chance if I really do, like, especially when it comes to vampires, because like I said before, I am that kid. Like, I loved vampires growing up. I still do.
We had the encyclopedia book that we get from Borders.
Yes.
Taking it back.
Yeah, no. I did when I was younger. Yeah. I had a vampire encyclopedia book that I took to school, and I highlighted it on movies that I had seen, and it was like color coded on movies that I had seen, movies that I wanted to see, and different characters that I wanted to look into. No wonder I had the reputation of the creepy person in high school that I did. But I mean, I love vampires, but I mean, Fright Night 2, the original sequel, is just such a cult classic because it is a different vibe than the first movie, and it's a little sillier, and there's a lot of different things. So I feel like if you're gonna make a second iteration of a remake, a redo of the first one, and there's already another sequel out there for the original one, yeah, I don't know. It was just disappointing. We'll just say it that. But yeah, watch it, form your own opinion. Prove me wrong. If you've seen it and you like it, comment below and tell me why you like it and what I should be looking out for. So I'm willing to give everything a shot. Kylie, what about you? What are your thoughts about Fright Night?
It's really good. It's fun. You know, if you like vampires or super into that, like, and if you haven't watched it, are you really a true vampire fan? Because that's what the question I had to ask myself. Have not seen the sequel. Now I need to watch it. So
YouTube.
go watch Fright Night though.
Yeah. Yeah. Go watch Fright Night. Jamie, what about you?
I love the movie Fright Night. I find it's fantastic. And for anyone who likes Halloween, horror movies, a fan of vampires, I'd recommend it. And AMC, and I love that they do this every day from October 1st to the end of Halloween. And if you're up early enough, you can even see a little bit November 1st. AMC does, I think it's 31 different movies. I'm not sure how many different horror movies they play in the month of October. But I did look
Fear
ahead
Fest.
because I like come again.
It's Fear Fest.
Oh,
That's
Fear
what-
Fest.
Fest?
Yep.
Yeah.
AMC Fear Fest. I love watching that. Have it recorded all the time. And I actually got Fright Night recorded for when I'm about to see it again. And I would just recommend anyone who hasn't seen it, you can see it on AMC. Skip ahead if you can. Make sure it's pre-recorded for yourself. Definitely worth a watch. I'm not sure if Fright Night 2 is the same, but I'm glad Cassandra managed to show that Fright Night 2 was, you can find that easily on YouTube. Watch the full movie. Definitely worth a watch as well.
Yeah, AMC Fear Fest. I definitely have to shout that out. A lot of us grew up with that. And I really appreciate the way that AMC Fear Fest has brought horror to the masses. Because I know for me, especially growing up in Ohio in the middle of nowhere, we
All we
don't
have.
yeah, we don't really have a lot. Like, I mean, Zane and I most recently, we were going to try to go see a film together. And that film was only in our local, and I mean, Norwalk's a small town, but we're able to have a really nice movie theater. That film was only in our theaters for 2 weeks, and then it was gone. Horror movies, unless they make a big splash, do not last long in our area. I remember when the first Paranormal Activity came out, a friend and I had to go all the way up to Avon Lake, which is about half hour away from us, because they were the only movie theater in the area showing Paranormal Activity. And we watched it in that movie theater. But horror movies, they're a little bit more accepted in our area, but still, we live in a small town. And so if you're not Barbie, or which I mean, I love Barbie, but if you're not Barbie or one
If
of the
you're not a blockbuster movie,
yeah,
you're not gonna make it very long.
so the fact that AMC Fear Fest was going along long before streaming was available, that was amazing. And that gave you access to a lot of really good horror classics. And if you're a kid like me that could not sleep in the middle of the night, you could turn on AMC and they'd be playing a horror movie at any given point in time during the month of October. So I absolutely love that you pinpointed that, because I feel like that's how a lot of us got access to horror before streaming. Now you have Tubi, which Tubi is kind of the landing
gateway.
page. Yeah, Tubi is the gateway now for a lot of horror, because a lot of the older classics, a lot of the movies that people want to see or haven't seen, that ends up on Tubi. And I feel like that's fantastic, because Tubi is now kind of like our Blockbuster. Blockbuster was that kind of place where you could go and find that obscure film, talk to the person there, and be like, hey, yeah, have you seen this? This movie's cool. I lived right down the street from a Blockbuster, so I was literally down there like 7 times a week. Like, they probably were sick and tired of me down there, but I loved that. So AMC Fear Fest is great. And now AMC has their own streaming service, which is AMC Plus, that has Shudder with it. And it is fantastic. I would definitely recommend. They have a ton of horror movies at a given point in time. along with, now that it's Halloween, both Shudder and AMC have their Halloween lineups coming out, and they have a lot of good films. So I would definitely recommend. But watch Fright Night. Fright Night is a great introduction to Tom Holland. Tom Holland goes on to do some really great films from here. Tom Holland did Child's Play. He famously did Child's Play with Don Mancini, and they did the first 3 films together. And then when they departed from Child's Play franchise and started as Chucky as his own character, that's when Don Mancini really took the reins of Chucky. But he also directed a couple episodes of Tale from the Crypt. He did the Langoliers. He did a ton of different things in horror, and he's just kind of a really great horror icon. He's also done a couple episodes of I know that they had that horror anthology that was out with the different directors. He did an episode of that. I'll have to link that down below. But he did a lot of really good films, and I think this is just the crown piece of what makes him great. That this is his first movie directing out of the gate. And if you like the combination of him and Roddy McDowall, go watch Class of 1984. I had never seen that movie until about a year ago, and I'm telling you, it's definitely worth a watch. It is crazy. Really crazy. And Roddy McDowall is great as always. But watch Fright Night. Chris Sarandon, I mean, we need to say more. He's fantastic in everything he does. And this is just one of those examples of where he just knocks it out of the park. So thank you for giving us such a great character in Jerry Dandridge. And as always, this movie is definitely worth a watch. Check it out, add it up to your horror lineup, and go watch some great spooky movies this season on AMC. Just like Jamie was saying. So thank you so much, Jamie, for coming on. If you have not seen Jamie is the wonderfully terrible Mr. Smiley in From, which is currently streaming on MGM Plus. Jamie is absolutely terrifying.
Thank you.
He's terrifying.
In a good way. In the best way possible.
Yeah.
Oh, say again. Oh, yes.
In the best way possible.
In the best way
I know you all mean that in the best possible way.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but yeah, Jamie is a horror icon in his own rights. You'll definitely see that when you're watching From. So definitely go check it out. You said it's available on Paramount Plus in Canada?
Yes, as well. And
Okay.
I do appreciate the compliment.
No problem. Well, I mean, we don't give compliments lightly. You do. I mean, you're in the season 2 poster, and that poster is terrifying. You're in the background, and you are terrifying. And like we said, in the best way possible. So
no, I appreciate. No, that's okay. I take that as a compliment. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
No problem. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we appreciate you coming on and talking about Fright Night. Fright Night is delightful, and obviously this is kind of rounding out our Halloween lineup. If you have not catched our previous episodes, go listen to them. We have a couple of really good ones, and we have a couple of good ones coming out with this one. So watch. In October, October is about to be on fire for us. So listen to some listen to the episodes and check in, and definitely go and watch this movie. And if you haven't seen this movie before, and you watch it and you listen to this episode, let us know what you think of the movie and if it's part of your horror lineup in Halloween. So until next time, it's me, Cassandra, and
Zane,
and
Jamie,
Kylie,
and Jamie.
and Jamie.
Yay!
Yay!
But we are the Horrorcraft podcast crew, and we're saying goodbye and stay spooky.
Spooky.
Bye.